Hi there, welcome. You have landed on Tips, Tools, and Techniques Club from the Sewing Studio in Maitland, Florida. We're so glad you're here. You're watching me live, so if you have questions, please let us know. If you are from anywhere, let us know. Please type it in so we know. We're doing this free content, so at least you can pay us back with a little bit of a comment on where you are. That makes us happy. If you have questions, you know I love to have questions. I love to answer things. I've been sewing. My name is Mary-Jeanine Ibargwin, and I have been sewing and quilting. I've been sewing since I was 5. I've been quilting. Well, I made a quilt when I was 12, but then I really started quilting like 36 years ago. So I've made a lot of quilts. I've made over 700 quilts, got a lot of knowledge, and I would love to answer your question. So hit me up with any questions you might have about whatever I'm talking about, or even I could probably answer something as long as I don't need to show you a sewing machine or something. I could probably answer questions. So let me know. A couple announcements here. Gabriella has put up our discount code. Pretty much everything I'm going to talk about today, we have available. There might be a couple things that have sold out this morning. I didn't check the basket. But if I talk about something and you want to order it, it's on my favorites page. You're going to get a 15% discount, which is on the bottom of your coupon code is on the bottom of your screen there. We'll put that up every once in a while. Gabrielle is also going to put up a list of a page of all my favorites. So the things that I'm talking about, we've put at the top of the page. You want to scroll down and see some of the other things that I've talked about in past tips, tools, and techniques. Please do see what interests you. That code is good till the end of Sunday, so midnight on Sunday. So you can look around and fill up your basket. And if we don't have it right now, we will definitely be getting more. And there's a few things that are probably going to sell out, and we will definitely get more. So we've got Tallahassee and Miami, Summerfield. I was just in Summerfield the other day. Longwood, Orlando, New Mexico. I think New Mexico gets the prize. So if you're from somewhere farther than New Mexico, from Maitland, Florida, let us know. A couple of announcements. First one is we have a shop hop going on. And if you live in Florida, you're like, of course, I know. Well, there's a shop hop in Florida. Well, this is a second shop hop for Central Florida. So there's actually 2 shop hops happening right now. This is Notions in Motion. And we are giving away, Gabrielle, I'm going to put you on the spot. What are we giving? Pop sockets, which are, well, they have, this is a pop socket. I have one on my phone as well. This is not branded with the Sewing Studio, but the one we're giving away has Sewing Studio on it. But I love it for my phone, but I really love it for rulers. So I put it on the rulers that I use the most. And then if I just use a ruler every once in a while, I may use a suction one, because once you put this on, it's pretty much stays on. So anyway, shop hop, back to the shop hop. There's looks like 7 different stores. And if you hit all 7 stores, you put your name in and you can win a prize. And yeah, so if you're into shop hopping with your friends, it started yesterday and it goes till April 5th. So 2 weekends, actually 3 weekends, because April 5th is a Saturday. So wanted to let you know about that. Also, I'm very excited. We just had an opening in my Hilo, Texas. An opening in our retreat, our sewing and quilting retreat, which is next weekend. Total of 20 people. One person had to step away, so I've got an opening, but we need to hear from you today or tomorrow, because we're ordering catered meals for lunch and dinner. So we sign up and we'll connect with you to get all the information about food. I wrote it down to make sure I didn't forget anything. So lunch and dinner catered. It goes from 9 on Friday to 8 at night, and then Saturday 9 to 8. You're going to have 2 professional teachers there at all times. There's 3 of us, and we're taking shifts. So bring your projects that you're having troubles with, and we will be there. Between the 3 of us, we're going to be able to figure out what your trouble is. So that's the idea behind this. It's $250. There are going to be 3 make it, take it. So each teacher has a make it, take it to talk about. And of course, all the supplies for that are free for the retreat people. There's going to be door prizes, which are really nice. They're like finished quilts and finished bags and stuff. And then finally, everybody gets a goodie bag. And there'll be chair massages too. You'll have to pay for those, but it's kind of nice when you've been sitting in a chair for hours and hours to have your back worked on. So one opening this coming Friday and Saturday, March 28th and 29th. So we'd love to see you if you're here, or if you're in San Diego from like Jill is, you could fly over for the retreat. Probably not, but anyway, we've got one more opening, so we'd love to see you. Okay, California. Okay, I think California wins. San Diego, yeah. I have a niece who lives in San Diego, and it's a beautiful spot. We used to live in Chula Vista when I was like age 4 and 5. So I remember my mother said it was always her favorite place of all the places we lived. So gorgeous area. I want to talk about a few classes that I have coming up before I jump into the content. Sorry for those of you that don't live here, but you know, Ocala, I have a student that comes from Tampa for all her classes, all my classes. So, you know, it's not too far. This is a jelly roll rug, and you may have recognized it because the pattern's been around for a little while. Two people recently asked me if I could teach it. So we set up a class, it filled. We set up another class, it filled. So after we're done here, Gabriella and I are going to put our heads together and see if we can find a third date for it before I leave on my summer vacation in July 1st. And if we can't do that, or even if we can, we'll definitely offer it again, probably October, November timeframe, time to, you know, ready to make those Christmas presents. So that's the jelly roll rug. And I just looked at it and it's full, but again, we'll take care of you if you want to take the class. This is machine applique. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say old-fashioned applique because that would probably be needle turn applique, but this is just a very simple way to do applique. You have a pattern, you're cutting out the design, you're putting a fusible product behind it, a fusible web behind all these pieces. And then I teach you various ways to use your sewing machine to go around all the edges. So if we back up again. So this is what you're looking at is like a table runner or a wall hanging. But in the class, you're going to make one of these flowers. And then if you wanted to make a full-size piece, you certainly could when you get home. And I just want to show you the technique of all those pieces and parts, because if you've never worked with fusible web, it takes a little getting used to. So that's machine applique. And I've got the class times written here. That is May 8th and May 15th in the morning. This is attic windows. Again, I taught this a while ago and I've had a couple of people ask for it, so I thought I'd do it again. And it requires a book and a ruler, but they come together. And here's the whole quilt. And I always like to show the back because the back is the fabric that the front came from. Sometimes when people are making attic windows, they like to buy a panel. But this is not that kind of quilt because we have to like Swiss cheese that fabric on the back to get all those pieces and parts. But what's really cool, and let's do an overhead, Gabriella. What's really cool about this particular technique is this is the window. Normally when you make an attic window, let's do it here. When you make an attic window, you end up having to sew a Y seam. But this particular design, you don't have to. It's the way you fold and sew. I think it's 2 seams, but there's no Y seam. This is automatically taken care of. So it's kind of hard to explain. But I've talked about it before at Tips, Tools, and Techniques, and maybe I will again soon. But anyway, you learn that technique, and it is one morning. You're certainly not going to finish all of the windows, but you're going to understand the technique. This particular one, boy, it looks really good on camera. I always look at it up close. This particular one, I added black sashing, but you don't have to. It just depends. You kind of audition. You make your windows, and you kind of lay them down and audition whether you want to have sashing or not. And I decided I kind of did. So that class is June 12th. I'm also teaching machine quilting with a walking foot on May 16th. If you've taken my machine quilting class and you want to move on from there, Gabrielle is going to show a picture of my Bargello class, and that'll be in April and May. All these classes are on my classes page, and we could put that link up in a minute, but there's my Bargello quilt. It takes a jelly roll and some background fabric. That yellow strip there, if you want, it's called the accent piece. And if you want to buy a 1/4 long yard of some accent to go inside, you can, but you don't have to. So I have a bucket of jelly rolls in the store that says Mary-Jeanine's preferred jelly rolls for the Bargello class, because you can't just buy strips that are, you know, this floral and that floral. They've got to be a gradation. So I've picked out some different ones. And also each fabric, you need 2 of them. So if you have this beautiful gradation, but there's only 1 of each, that's not going to work. It's got to be at least 2 of each. So anyway, that's my Bargello class. And then the other picture we're going to put up is my Vivid Kaleidoscope quilt. I talked about this a few months ago on how to make it. I went through the whole thing. And we have kits. So once the kits are gone, class is done, because you need this fabric to make this quilt. And so that is coming up May 14th, 21st, and 28th. And there's just a few seats left. So those are some of the classes that I'm taking. Are you able, Gabriella, to put up the page of all my classes? Just in case anybody wants to do that. Some people don't know about that beautiful filter button on the website, which you can filter down to one person's classes. So we can put that up for you. If you have questions, I don't think I've said this yet. If you have questions, let me hear them. I love to answer good questions, and just about every question is a good question. So she's going to put up that in a second here, and I'm going to look at the Seattle, Washington. Yeah, you may win the prize. California, New Mexico, San Diego, Vermont. We're going to be up your way. Tell me where in Vermont. We're going to be, well, mostly in Maine and upstate New York, but I think we might be driving through Vermont. Maybe hit Ben & Jerry's or Cabot. Ben & Jerry's and Cabot Creamery are 2 of our favorite places, except for, of course, Burlington is my all-time favorite place in Vermont. Been there many, many, many times. Was there last summer. We took the ferry over from Plattsburgh. I always forget the name of that place. Anyway, while she is putting up that thing, I'm going to start talking about this beautiful quilt behind me. I can't believe how good it looks on the camera. I made this a few months ago at a quilting retreat, actually, most of it. We still have all of these fabrics, all those bright fabrics. It's a line from, now all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, I wrote it down. It's our line from the Phosphor collection from Libs Elliott. And then the background, we also have that background. I can get that number. But I've actually got a couple extra bolts because I used it for the background for this quilt, but I also used it for another quilt you're going to be seeing in a little bit. So I want to be sure I had plenty of that gray. Sometimes grays can be a little yellow, and to me, you get a little nauseous looking at them, but I really like this gray. It's a kind of a blue gray, I think. Hi, Anita in Longwood and Plattsburgh. Okay. Your hometown is Plattsburgh. Thank you. It is Plattsburgh. It's a sweet little town. Okay, so lots to tell you about this quilt. First of all, the pattern is Churn Dash, which is in my favorites page, and I think we might have a few left, and we will definitely get more. I will tell you that this pattern, I'm just now realizing, no, it's got it. This pattern, she's got 5 blocks by 6 blocks, so a total of 30 blocks. I just didn't want to make that big of a quilt. That's like a queen size quilt. So I made 4 by 5. So I only have 20 blocks where the pattern calls for 30 blocks. So you don't need nearly as much fabric, of course, and it's a little bit quicker make unless you need a queen size quilt. And if you look very carefully at this, there's really just 1 block, but the way you turn it, so it looks like, that's why it's called Churn Dash Puzzle, because the way you turn the block is the way it, the reason why it's all so mishy-mashy here. But every block has a skinny, long churn dash. Every block has a chubby churn dash. And every block has a small, tiny baby churn dash. But these are all churn dash blocks. It's a very, it's a building block, one of our standard patterns, I would say. But the real building block are these half square triangles, which I want to talk about a little bit. And yes, that Mary-Jeanine can't get off half square triangles, but the reason I talk about them a lot is not only there's so many ways to make them, but also there are a lot of reasons to make half square triangles. It's a basic building block. Somebody was making a quilt the other day, and she was asking me why all our corners of her half square triangles were chopped off, and it's because they weren't trimmed right, or there's lots of different reasons. So if you build it properly, you'll have your beautiful corners that with the corners not chopped off, and that's what we're looking for. Let's see, while she's got the camera here, I did do my own quilting on my sit down long arm, just very simple spirals, kind of filled the whole thing with spirals. I'm going to talk about the binding for a minute. Thank you. The binding is scrappy. So you notice every once in a while, I added some fun color to the binding. There's a blue piece. So yeah, so it's just something a little different rather than just plain old binding. And while I'm thinking about it, I have to say things when I'm thinking about it. So I like to put my labels on my quilt. I embroider them onto the back of my backing fabric before I base the quilt. And this is kind of upside down. But you'll notice that if I turn it just right, you'll notice it's a separate piece of fabric because I embroidered my backing fabric, and then accidentally, when I was trimming it up, I trimmed off the label, and I had to cut it out and then resew it to the back. So everybody makes mistakes, even the teacher. Just wanted to show you that. But yeah, label your quilts when you can. All right, so let's talk. We're going to do an overhead here, and I want to talk about how to do half square triangles. So I do talk a lot about a product called triangulations. This is not it. This is my second favorite way to do triangles. Triangulations for this quilt, the reason I decided not to do it is because there were so many different color triangles. And when you do triangulations, you end up with a whole page of one color. And I was worried I would have a lot left over. I didn't have a lot of fabric to waste. So I did my plan B, which is the slotted trimmer. And we have a bunch in stock that just came in. And here's what they look like. I'll show you how it's used. But as it says, you can trim 11 different size half square triangles with these 2 rulers. So I want to show you how it works. So we're going to take 2 squares. We're going to sew them together. This one's easier to see. And then you can either draw a line with your Fix-On pen. We love our Fix-On pen for the back of our fabric. We never use it for the front of the fabric. And then I use red thread, which I wouldn't normally use, but I use red thread to sew on the 1/4 inch on either side. Well, if you have a lot of triangles, that's a lot of drawing of lines with a Fix-On pen or whatever pen you've got. You got to get your ruler out and you've got to draw, and that takes some time. So a better way would be something called diagonal seam tape. This is my tape from home. And when you put it down on the bed of your machine, let's pretend this is the bed of my machine, okay? And the center line is red, so that's where the needle is. And then the black lines are 1/4 inch on either side. So when I put this under my needle, let's say there's no line. You can see the lines. So there's no line drawn down the center. But if I put my needle, or I put my foot, I like to use a scant 1/4 inch foot. So the side of my foot is right there, and my needle, of course, is right here. And I'm going to run the point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball this point, and I'm going to sew so the point of the square lines up with this black line all the way up. So that's what I'm eyeballing. I'm not watching my foot. I'm not watching my needle. I'm watching the bottom of the square. And my machine is going to sew this line perfectly. I don't know if that one's easier to see. Yeah. Okay. So again, if you don't want to mark every single square, get some diagonal seam tape. And I use it for all kinds of things. Also, if you're doing a 1/4 inch seam and you're not sure about a 1/4 inch seam, you could just run your fabric along that line. So that's another way to use it. But mostly I use it for half square triangles. And there's a lot of it there. I've been using this for years, and there's still plenty on there. So that's on my favorites page because I couldn't live without it. So, all right, so let's talk about trimming these puppies. So you create these guys, and then that's a lot of trimming. So the reason I love these slotted trimmers is that I only have to trim 2 sides and not 4. So first I'm going to cut this in half. Now I have 2 half square triangles, right? But normally you would press this open and then you would get your ruler out, you cut 2 sides and then you turn around, you cut. That's a lot of work. The beauty of these slotted trimmers is we're gonna use this ruler because I want to do the 4.5. Let me do this better. So you can see the line. So there's 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, all the way to 6.5. So I'm going to put my sewing line on this dotted line. Couldn't be easier. Some rulers, you're like, okay, where do I put these lines? You see how it's dotted, just like a sewing line? That's exactly how you use it. But I'm going to make a 4.5 inch unfinished. It even says it's 4 inches finished, 4.5 unfinished. So I'm going to put my dotted line for the 4.5 inch block, move it back, and try it again. All right. Yep. I'll move it over a little. Yep. And down a little. I want to get this so you guys can see it. Oh, and one more thing. I'm left-handed. So if I orient the half square triangle like this, then I can cut, and I'll show you how you do it with the right hand too. So I'm left-handed and I can make 2 cuts, done. Okay. Or if you're right-handed, you're going to put the point up at the right-hand corner and the exact same thing, line up my dotted line with my sewing line and cut. And then the next question is, so Mary-Jeanine, why is it called a slotted trimmer? Because they have these little slots in here that you can cut off the dog ears. But I'll be completely honest, I don't use it because I'm Mrs. Efficient. It takes too long to get my rotary cutter in there. I just chop them off real quick with my eyeball. And now you've done all 4 sides. All you have to do is open it. You've done all 4 sides beautifully with 2 cuts. Love it. And your dog ears are gone. Well, this one's not because I didn't cut it very well. But you get the idea. One I cut well and the other one I didn't cut well. So yeah, so now you can press very carefully because that's the bias, of course. And now you have a half square triangle. So 11 different sizes. I couldn't live without my slotted trimmer. It's one of those things where once I got it, I'm like, oh, I need to keep this in my life. So we have a few more, I don't know, a handful of them on my favorites page, and enjoy. If you have any questions about that, I haven't been watching the questions. So if you have any questions, let us know, and I'd love to answer them. All right. And then I feel like there was a third thing we were supposed to, oh, the handout. Haven't talked about a handout yet. If Gabrielle is going to put the link up for the handout, if you haven't printed it yet, you can either print my handout or bring it up on a second screen, whatever is good for you. It was in the literature, we emailed out, so you may already have that. But in case you don't have my handout, we're going to put that link up and you can click on it. And again, either put it on if you don't want to use paper, put it on another device, or print it out. Good afternoon from, I missed that, Delam? Dundee. I'm not sure I know where Dundee is. Is that down by Legoland? Yeah, I think I used to drive through it when I used to drive down to Port Charlotte to see my parents, but I'm not really sure. You have to tell us where Dundee is. All right. So Gabrielle is getting called away, so I'm on my own for a few minutes. We're running her ragged today. We've got lots of wonderful new employees, but they have lots of questions, and so she gets to answer them. So bear with me. Let me see what I'm supposed to talk about next. I'm going to talk about flange binding. Oh, here's another quilt that I forgot to talk about that I'll be teaching. A pineapple technique, and it's great for scraps. I use the leftover bits from a Lori Holt class that I taught. And so you're going to learn how to make this pineapple or this pineapple. This is called Hugs and Kisses in the book. There's a book and a ruler, and it makes really perfect work of your pineapples. And so that's a 1 morning class, 1 and done. You're going to learn the technique. Okay, so now we get to work. Now I get to show you flange binding. What the heck is flange binding? I had somebody come in today, and she's been watching me forever, and she was very sweet. She said she was a big fan, and flange binding is one of the things that she's been doing ever since she saw me talk about this, which is more than once, but let's do an overhead. So flange binding means that you have, there we go, that you have, there's a little bit of, a flange, piping. It's an empty piping. Somebody asked today if you could put cording in that. Maybe if it was really thin cording. I'm not sure I would bother, but I guess you could do that. So this is flange binding. And by the way, this quilt also has rounded corners, which it works fine with that, but it also works fine, of course, with mitered. We'll talk about that in a moment. But basically, let's do a full on. This is my daughter's t-shirt quilt that I'm actually teaching on this week and next week. But anytime you have fabric, a plain border, a flange binding would be a great way to add a little interest to the quilt, as opposed to, we're going to back up and look at this quilt. We don't want to do flange binding on this quilt because we have triangles that go right to the very edge. And if I were to do flange binding, it would cover up my points. And in fact, I did a really good job of covering that point up anyway. I don't need more help with the flange, because the flange just goes a little bit wider and you don't really want it on a pieced border. But for a plain border, it's really, really a nice addition. If you go to quilt shows, you'll see a lot of flange binding because it really elevates the quilt, I think. So I have a quick little demo for that, but it's also the front of the handout. We put a comment, just a couple comments up for my handout. Looks like about three comments up. So if you just tuned in and you want to get the handout, there it is. It's a bunch of pages. So think about just putting it up on another device. Let's talk about flange binding. First of all, pull up the handout here. So I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I noticed the Missouri Star had a really good tutorial. However, Jenny likes a 2.5 inch wide binding, and I'm a big fan of 2 1/4. That's just how I learned how to do binding. And so I'm giving you both sets of numbers. So the flange, believe it or not, I know this is crazy, but your wider piece is actually the flange, and your narrower piece is the outside piece. So in other words, so there's a yellow flange, and we're actually using more yellow than black. So here we go back to here. So we got to figure out what is the perimeter of your quilt. Let's say 300. You need 300 inches of that and 300 inches of that. Okay. So that you're going to sew those together longwise, all the way down, and you're going to press toward the outside fabric. This is all written down. Here's a tip. Some of you have heard me say this before, but I no longer fold my binding in half and press it. It's an extra step that's not needed. And in fact, your quilt will look better if you don't press your binding in half. And here's why. Just pretend this is regular binding, okay? If I were to press this in half, give it a nice hard press, then when I bring this around, you think about it, there's a little less fabric needed on the inside of your binding than on the outside of your binding. And if you press, you're asking the fabric to do something it really doesn't want to do, and it's not going to lay as flat and as beautiful. So try making your binding without pressing it in half first and see what you think. I've been doing it this way for probably 20 years and never looked back. So there's that. Actually, I wrote that down. Okay, so here we go. Here's my next, get all that out of the way. My next little demo here. So this is the front of the quilt. So I'm going to sew the binding to the back, just the way you would do anytime you're doing machine go around on both go arounds. You sew it to the back first with a nice 1/4 inch seam. And then when you bring it around, that magical flange shows up beautifully. And I'm going to use my black thread to sew this down. And I'm going to use, if you have a stitch in the ditch foot, walking foot, that's the perfect time to use it. On my Janome 6700, I have a walking foot, and then you can change the sole plate on it. So one of the sole plates is stitch in the ditch that has this metal piece down the middle, and I can follow it along. If you don't have one foot, just keep your eye on that and try to keep it a nice straight stitch with a black thread, and you won't even notice that you've sewn it down. I'm going to pull my t-shirt quilt out one more time just so you can see how it looks finished. So there it is. Oh, and there's a pin. Oh, that's my note. And so I used, what did I do there? Well, they're both purple. And actually, you know, I said to use black. I guess it depends on how you press the seam. This one, the black is the lower, but on this one, the flange is lower. So I guess it depends on which way you press your seam. I've never noticed that. So I guess you get to decide that one way or the other. So anyway, give it a try. Tell me what you think. And that's flange binding. Okay. And we're going to turn the page, and we're going to talk about a marble maze toy, and then I have another great quilt. I can't wait to show you. I like to try to mix things up. We're not talking about just quilting. We're talking about sewing projects, which talk about these cuties in a minute. But I want to be sure that even people who don't sew, maybe you serge, maybe you embroider, maybe I got something for everybody. So let's talk about a marble maze. You know, like, okay, what is it and what do I do with it? It is a quiet, fidgety toy. Let me find one that's easier to, yeah. So here it is, very simple white fabric. I've got a marble in here. So I've created a maze with my sewing machine so I can just push the marble around. Why would I want to do such a thing? Well, if you have a fidgety child, when my kids were little and I'd take them to church, and, you know, they all wanted to take a toy with them, but of course I don't want to take a noisy toy that you press a button and something happens. So this was a great quiet toy that they could play with. Actually, I left this open so the marble comes out. It's not supposed to do that, but I haven't closed this up yet, apparently. So I'll show you some other ones. But anyway, or, you know, if you've got a senior in your life that needs a fidget blanket, or, you know, got dementia and they need something to play with their hands, this is a great way to entertain their hands. I've made it out of minky, which is really soft and sweet. I can't see the line, so they kind of have to, whoops, I didn't close that one in either. I got to go home and sew those up. And then here's fun with bugs. So really any type of, just a couple rectangles of fabric is all you need. And they don't have to be huge, but I really like the one out of minky. I think that would be really nice and soft for people to play with. So it couldn't be easier. We're going to do still got the overhead. So basically we're going to sew all the way around. We're going to leave a hole in, flip it right side out. I've given you some different maze ideas. And of course, you can come up with your own if you're so inclined, but that's just a very simple little quiet toy to keep somebody's fingers occupied. Okay, question. Will machine applique be available online? How about the pattern? The pattern is available. I think it's in my favorites page, but if it's not, we can put it. But you can also look for, the name of the pattern is Bloomers. Can you just do a search on bloomers and see what shows up on your search bar right there? Anyway, but the pattern is called Bloomers if you just want to do that. But no, I don't do online classes. I'm a very hands-on teacher. I like to keep walking around and checking on my students and making sure everybody's on the right track. Can't really do that with online classes, so I don't really do that. But the pattern is available, and the pattern is very good explaining everything. So we'll make sure that it gets on my favorites page. Thank you for asking that. Any other questions, let me know. I just wanted to show you that cute little marble maze. If you were here locally, I could let you reach in and grab a couple marbles. This morning, 5 or 6 people took a handful of marbles because I got a whole bag from a garage sale, and I certainly don't need them all. So I try to give them away when I talk about the marble maze. There's your Bloomers pattern. She put it right there on the comments page. You can take a look at that. I was up in Wisconsin 2 or 3 summers ago and saw it hanging on the wall. It's like, oh, that's what I want to teach for machine applique, and I've been doing that ever since. Okay, now we're going to talk about the next quilt, which is a stunner. There aren't that many, you know, I love every quilt I make, but I do have my favorite. And this one was one of those quilts where when I wasn't working on it, I was thinking about working on it. I had to go away for a couple of days to teach some guild classes over on the other coast, and it's all I could think about was this quilt. I can't wait to get back to my quilt. We're going to talk all kinds of things about it. It's very modern. I had somebody this morning say, "Where's the other half?" I'm like, well, it's a modern quilt, and modern quilts, one of the things about modern quilts is they take Lone Star, they take patterns, they take quilt designs, and they deconstruct them and then put them back together in a different way. So you can be thinking that that's what we kind of did here. We deconstructed a Lone Star, we put it back together, and she said, well, can I make two parts and put it together and call it one quilt? Yes, you absolutely can. You can do whatever you want with this quilt. And while we're doing that, I'm going to get my drink of water because I'm about talked out here. So this is called Luminary. Let me show you the pattern. Everything clipped together here because otherwise it'd go flying. So it's called Luminary by Allison Glass. Well, actually, Allison Glass is the company, I guess, but Jamie Swanson maybe works for them. I'm not really sure. Anyway, this has been a very popular pattern. It's very simple. In the social media, they say, oh, there's only 3 seams you have to match. So I want to show you this picture here. Once you make all your pieces, which we're going to talk about in a minute, really you just have 1, 2, 3 seams that have to match. Everything else is kind of improvisational. We'll go into that in a minute. So that's the pattern. And then this is the ruler. I'm sorry, I lost that ruler. Oh, there it is. I found it. So this is the piece that you need. And they said, oh, just cut this out and then use your rotary cutter to cut your fabric around this. Yes, you can do that, but I'm not a fan because if you start to cut little bits off of this, then you don't have your ruler or you make copies of it. So you could, if you were very, very careful, this could be your ruler. But I went out there looking for a ruler that I could use for this, and there's not one out there. So I got my handy husband. This is a prototype, so it doesn't have any words on it. I kept losing this on my cutting board because it's clear. But my handy husband has a laser cutter at work, and so he cut a bunch for us, and we're selling those. They're on my favorites page. And I believe they're $20 minus your 15% discount. And that is what I used to cut all my pieces. So let's get into it from the beginning. We're going to cut a bunch of different strips. And let's come back and look at the quilt for a minute. Even though this is my block, let's say, you can't really, yeah, okay, this is my block, let's say, okay. But even within the block, I've got some pink left over from here, and I've got some dark left over from here. And so it's a mishmash, it's like a blending of all the different colors, which is one of the reasons it's successful, I think. And so when I'm cutting, we're going to go back to the overhead. So when I'm cutting my strips out, I'm going to make sure that I've got mostly one color, but just a little bit of a next door color just to get that exploding, color wash idea. So here's some different strips. They could be 2 inches wide. They could be 1 inch wide or anywhere in between. I'm going to sew them together so they look like this, right? I don't want it straight up and down because then my ruler won't work on that. So I've got to stair step them. Okay. And then the third step is I'm going to cut them. And when you cut them, you don't have to do straight lines. They don't have to be 45. They can be this way. They can be this way. You can move your ruler around to cut your lines. So then you're going to end up with something that looks like this. Sometimes they're fat on this end and sometimes they're fat on that end. And it adds a lot of interest, I think, to the whole thing. So once you've got that, you can sew them together. You end up with something that looks like this. And then finally, you take your handy dandy ruler and you cut out a diamond that looks like that. So it's all in the pattern. Highly recommend you get the pattern. I didn't give you enough information to do it on your own, I don't think. Just wanted to show you the process because I was really interested to know the process when I looked at that. I was like, how did they do that? But now, of course, it makes perfect sense. So the pattern is on order, and we're going to be getting it in soon. The rulers we have right now, and if we sell out, we'll make more, as they used to say in that commercial. I don't remember what, Doritos, I think. We'll make more. Oh, and then finally, I didn't talk about these project boards. Actually, this is going to be the make it, take it at the retreat. So there you go. There's a reason to take the retreat right now. These project boards were designed by Lori Holt. So if you go, I'm not prepared to do a demo. Very simple. A piece of foam board on the bottom, batting, and then some 2.5-inch strip to go around for the binding. If you go to YouTube, Lori Holt project board, you will find lots of videos on how to make these. So we're going to be making them next weekend at the retreat. But why do I need a project board? This is another one of those things where I didn't realize I needed until I made them. And oh my gosh, if you want to carry pieces from your machine to your ironing board to your cutting board, whatever, you know, it is awesome to have. Lori Holt's got a huge stack of these. I only have 3, and I need to make more for myself. I took them to retreat, and it's great because my sewing table at the retreat was just covered with projects, and I was able to lay out. In fact, I laid out the Churn Dash quilt on this size, so a whole block with those 3 Churn Dashes fit on this, and then I was able to sew them together. So just being able to visualize how your block looks, a lot less mistakes if you've got something like this. I used to use a small green mat, and this is way better because the mat sometimes folds over and falls down, and then all my pieces fall down. But this is not going to, unless you break it in half, nothing's going to happen to it. It's foam board, it's going to stay. So these are really, for me, have been a game changer, and I use them all the time in my sewing room. So Lori Holt project boards, I think she even sells them, but they're so easy, and you just use some leftover batting from your last quilt project and you're going to be good. So if there's any questions, Winter Springs, Evelyn, any questions about project boards or Luminary, I'd love to answer them. Just one more thing about the quilting. I had all the visions of all these beautiful, you know, quilting starbursting out of this thing. And when it came right down to it this week, I'm like, yeah, I just need to do something simple. I may go back later and fill in some of these with some fun stuff. But I of course, did horizontal lines throughout the whole quilt. And then I started at the top here, came down and did a V. So there's all these V's that all the way to this center line and come back out. So there, and if you go to, if you are into social media, I believe it's #Luminary Quilt. You will see lots of other ones. People have done all kinds of different things with their Luminary quilts, but this is kind of a wall hanging. Evelyn, yes, we have a retreat. I talked about it. You can go back to the beginning once we're done here. Go back to the beginning because I talked about the retreat. It was my second announcement. Got a retreat coming up this Friday and Saturday, March 28th and 29th. It's 2 full days. You got time with 3 professional teachers, me, Jane Ann, and Pamela. Catered meals, make it, take it, door prizes, goodie bags, chair massages. We have 1 opening. Somebody had to pull out, so we'd love to see if you can come this weekend. Okay, any other good questions? Where is the Luminary template? Is it on my favorites page? It's on the, so if you click on the favorites page, just scroll up through the comments. We've got our, we're going to put it there again. My favorites page is coming up. Click on that and you can purchase it. It's a $20 ruler, and you're supporting a cottage industry, which is my husband. So there you go. All right. Lots of good questions. Thank you so much. We have a 15% discount. Anything you purchase today, which are on my favorites page, or anything else you want to buy. You don't have to buy just my stuff. Anything that's out there on our website, purchase it. You get 15% off between now and Sunday at midnight. So enjoy. I got 2 more things to talk about. So let's do it. This is the next handout. It's the bird block. All right. So some of you who have been with me before, comments on the sit down versus long arm. Sure. Let me talk about that in a minute. Okay, Jill. some of you that have been with me for a while, and let's scroll up with the camera just a little bit if we're able to, Gabriella. So we see the top of that maybe? I just want to be able to see the top of the quilt because the other camera, it doesn't see it. There it is. So if you've been with me for a little while, you've seen these birds in a big old honkin' quilt, which is in your handout. There it is. It's a queen size quilt for my sister-in-law. Lots of birds. And then this is the back of the quilt. So I figured out how to make a really big bird. Somebody said I should have made him yellow, but I didn't. But that quilt got gifted. And then a guild on the other coast asked me to teach the bird quilt. I'm like, I guess I'm making another one. So I made another one, a much smaller. This one actually lives in my kitchen because I love looking at it so much. And it is very similar to the other one, just smaller. So I guess we can go back to the other camera. But let's talk about these borders real quick. I came up with this idea because there was a lot of background in the corners, like how can I make the corners interesting? So I came up with this idea and implemented it, love it. And then I showed it to my husband, who's like Mr. Google. I mean, he knows everything. And he said, oh, those are chamfered edges. They're what? They're chamfered edges. It's an architectural term, so you can look it up. But I just thought it was cool. I used the same striped fabric for that as I used for the binding, so it kind of ties it all together. This is actually built into 4 columns, so no matter how wide my improvisational bird ended up, I cut them all the same width, and then I put them up on my design wall and set it up so they look like they're a crowd of birds. Notice some are pointing left, some are pointing right. None of them are kind of exactly lined up. That's what I wanted. I wanted it to look like nature. I love their little legs. I'm a big fan of black and white fabric, so I had lots of choices for stripes and zigzag. And then you notice the legs some are splayed out and some are a little more vertical. So there's so much you can do with these silly little birds. They're just so joyful. And I don't know about you, but I need lots of joy in my life right now. So let's talk about how we make these little guys. And by the way, before you ask, there's a free pattern. Here's the handout. The second line, you can get the free bird block here. So you type that into your browser and you will get an 8-page, well, it's really 4 pages, but you have to cut them in half. So when I cut them in half and then I put a little staple up in the corner and yeah, so that's what the pattern looks like. The pattern's very good. Couple notes. I can't read barely read my writing, but if you're into social media, hashtag #BlockLottoBird, you will see a million different birds out there. This block's been out there for a while. Jill, I haven't forgotten you. Let me just get through this and then we'll talk about sit down versus long arm. Okay, so that, and then I also have a note here that's very useful is to have the diagonal seam tape, which I talked about earlier. I just DST, and a clapper, which I bring this every time because I want to talk about it. And then of course I immediately forget. A lot of people this morning had a clapper, which I was really glad to know, but what is it for? It's a piece of hardwood that once you press something and you want to get it super flat, and you don't clap, I don't know why it's called a clapper, but you just push down and let the thing cool under the clapper, and you will get a much flatter, sharper seam. And mine is always sitting on my ironing board. I'm using it all the time. So that's on my favorites page. So those are the 2 things that I find useful, the diagonal seam tape and the clapper. Okay, so let's build a bird. I'm going to start backwards. And then we'll go forward from that. So there's this cute little legs. And you basically just take a piece of sky fabric and, do it wherever you want to cut a straight line, wherever you want his legs to be. And then you insert these two little long pieces, and those are the legs. Okay. And then there's my bird. Wait a minute, not that one. Yes. Why am I having trouble with this? There he is. I had it right the first time. Any what? Rain? Oh, We had an announcement that we weren't sure about. Okay, so there's the bird. And all these parts are very improvisationally cut and sewn. For me, the hardest one is this silly little beak. And let's go back up to the quilt for a minute. You'll notice that some of my beaks are like perfect, if you want to call it that. And then, you know, and there some are small. And then here's one up here that has such a big beak that I've actually chopped off the point, but that's okay. It's improvisational, and maybe that's what his beak really looks like. So that's one of the reasons this is a very improvisational quilt. So we're going to go back to the overhead. And so this is his beak, and it's kind of a weird seam, and it might take a little practice to get it just right. But once you've sewn that on, of course, you can clip off the extra black, and then you have a beak. There it is. And then you've got this body. We're going to call this the body, and we're going to call this the wing. Okay. There's the body and the wing. And this piece here this is how it's built. We little snowball his little bottom corner, and then we sew another square here, flip it up, trim that off, and now you've got the body. So it's just following, again, the pattern is very well written. It tells you how to do each piece. The first page is how many pieces to cut. This is a great picture. Whoops. This is a great picture. I use it all the time. Just like, okay, I need legs, I need body, I need wing, you know. So page 3 is a good one. In any case, yeah, I think that's everything. You're going to need sky fabric. I think I've bought out all our sky fabric recently, so we're going to have to re-up on the sky fabric, Gabriella. Next time a salesperson comes in, tell him you need sky fabric, and he's going to look at you like you're crazy. Yeah, so let's talk, Jill, let's talk about long arm versus sit down quilt. We're talking about quilting machines. And first of all, when you talk about quilting machines, you're talking about something that has a harp, which is the inside of the hole, that hole where where you're sewing. It's got a harp of 16, 18, 20, 35 inches long. I mean, really big. So that's why it's called a long arm, because it's got a really long arm. Okay. And then also long arm quilters work on a frame. So they load the quilt onto a big frame, and then they move the machine on the quilt. And oftentimes it's computerized, so they can decide on a design and hit go, and the machine does all the work for you. That's called edge to edge, and it's usually a lot cheaper than custom quilting. So that's a true long arm. A sit down, which is what I have, is I've got a 16-inch arm, but it's stationary in a table, and it's actually turned 90 degrees. So I'm looking at the needle, and I have to move the quilt under the needle. So the machine is stationary, I'm moving the quilt. In the first example, the quilt is stationary, and you're moving the machine. So you get to decide, A, do you have the space for a long arm? Because they take up 12 feet by 10 feet. It takes up a lot of space. And B, and it's not cheap. And thirdly, do you want to move the machine? Thousands of people do it. Not a problem. A, I don't have the space. We just built a house and I didn't build a room for it. And secondly, I like moving the quilt. So those are the biggest differences. The machine I have is a Juki sit down long arm. And the reason I got it is because you can upgrade it to the frame, and you can also put robotics on it. That's what they call it when you program it on the computer, and it sews it out for you. I think most people that have that Juki actually have it on a frame, but I am old school and I just keep it on. I keep it the way it is. I actually bought extra wings for my table. So I have a 72-inch table. It's stuck into a corner, so the quilt can't fall off there, and it can't fall off there, and it can't fall off there. So it only falls on my stomach. I kind of keep it lifted up so there's no drag, and it works really well for me. I quilt all my quilts like that. Hopefully that helped. Jill, if you have any other questions about that, let me know. And do it quick, because I have one more thing to talk about, and then I'll be done. And I'm doing pretty good time-wise. Okay. We are going to talk about these little cuties. These are storage pods. It's the last thing in your handout. And I made these for my camper because my little bathroom in my camper does not have any medicine cabinet or any shelves or anything. So when we stop and we're camping for 5 or 6 days, I'll stick things in that. And so I have 3 hooks, command hooks in my little bathroom that everything is hanging like this, and they're adorable and they make me happy because it's K-facet fabric on the inside and out. So these are in my bathroom. The pattern that comes in the handout only has one size, which is the large size. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to show you. Let's do a full on. Just get rid of this. So just to get that out of the way, the first one is the pattern that comes with the handout. That's 100%. And then if you take your printer and you ask it to reduce it down to 75%, you get that middle one, and then 50%, you get the small one. So that's all I did. Same design, just 3 different sizes. I did it myself on my printer. Okay, so some other ideas. I made this one with soft and stable, so it's a lot more soft and stable. I made this one yesterday with just batting, so it's very loosey-goosey, but it still works. It's just not as stiff. And I also used a pieced fabric that I had some leftover strips for that. So there's that. This one, I realized that when I was making these and I started using them, a lot of people make them and they don't use them. I realized that one single strip, the thing was constantly doing that spinning on me. I was always having to look for the front. So I decided it's going to try making it then with two hangers. So maybe it won't spin so much. So I will report back and let you know. But I think that's going to solve my problem for my spinning thing. So I may just add another strip to those for the bathroom. So that's an upgrade that's not in the handout, but I would recommend trying that. So it's a very simple make. Let's do an overhead. And the last 4 pages of your handout are this. So what do we need? You need some inside fabric. And by the way, this doesn't look like this because you have to fold your fabric in half. And this little piece, how did I do this? Oh, I'll move it. Sorry. I'll do it. I'll be okay. You fold your fabric in half and then put this down, and it tells you where the fold is. So then you cut out your corners, cut out your back seam. I do all of that with a rotary cutter. And then even with that, I just go slowly with a rotary cutter. So that's my lining. And then I need another one of your outside, of course. And then a third one out of either your soft and stable or your batting or whatever you've got. So cut that out 3 times. And I just brought this, I don't know how many of you have worked with soft and stable. I'm a huge fan of soft and stable. I find I'm using it for all kinds of things. But it is a foamy product. One of the nice things about it, it's got fabric on both sides. So you can do, in fact, no, I didn't, but you can do quilt as you go. You could do sew and flip on a piece of this, and then it could be the outside of your bag, and you don't need a lining when you're sewing your sew and flip. That's your lining. And of course the bag has a lining once you're done doing all your sewing and flipping. But anyway, it's just an idea. I've made many bags like that and I just love it. But I love soft and stable for all kinds of projects. So if you're a By Annie pattern nut, you know about that stuff because she uses it a lot. She might have even developed it. I think she did. Okay, so back to this. One tip for you is when you put the outside and the batting together, I like to flip this over and give it a really good mist and a hot press with my iron and let it cool completely, because I find that makes these 2 pieces stick together really well, and it acts like one piece of fabric. So whenever I want to add batting, I just go ahead and steam and press the heck out of it. So we're going to take this, we're going to do our back seam, our bottom seam, and through the magic of television, here it is. I used red thread to sew there and there. And the same thing with the lining. We sew the back, we sew the bottom. And then we're going to separately, I'm sure if you've ever made a bag, you're familiar with this process. I call it duckbill, but it's also just, you're going to fold that together. You're going to sew across there, sew across here. I forgot to bring my wonder clips, but once you've sewn that, then you have that three-dimensional bag, right? So you're going to do that for both pieces. And then your final step, see, I did it today and I did it this morning. I forgot. We need to leave a hole, and I like to leave it right here for flipping the whole thing right side out. So once you sew that whole thing, take apart. You really shouldn't. You should just be sewing here and sewing there, but I always forget and I have to take the stitches out. Jill asked, can you launder soft and stable? Absolutely. Absolutely. It washes beautifully. Once you've created these two pieces, you want to kiss the right sides together and put them together. And I forgot to talk about the little hanger, so let's do that now. I think they tell you, and you really can make it any size, but I want to say it's like 6 by 2.5 or something. You take that piece, fold it in half first with the iron, and then bring in your two sides, fold it in again so all your raw edges are enclosed. I like to have 2 rows of stitches to come down. You can see that, right? So I'm going to have 2 of those. And if you've ever made a bag, you've probably made the mistake like I have, but you don't sew these like this, right? Because then once you sew the seam, your loop is on the inside. You got to do all the raw edges together. So if you have 2 of them, you could put one on that side of the seam and one on that side of the seam. And now you can sew all the way around, flip it right side out with that hole in the lining. And then finally, you're going to sew a top stitch all the way around the edge. And I forgot to do it on this one, but I need to sew my little lining piece closed. See here, I've left it open accidentally. You know, if you're super lazy like I am, you're going to just sew it on a machine, just kind of close it, have the tiniest little seam allowance, and that'll be fine. If you really want to make something super, super perfectly special, then you're going to hand sew that closed, but not where I want to spend my time usually. I will usually machine that. That's on the inside. If there's any questions, now's a good time because I'm done. Wow, 2:04. That was amazingly fast. I hope you caught it all. If you didn't catch it all, watch it again. I'm pretty sure I said just about everything I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we can see one of you at the retreat starting Friday morning. We're going to have a really good time. We've done this once before and we had a great time. 15 out of the 20 people said they wanted to come back and do it again. That's how much fun we had. So hopefully we will see you then. Until then, I won't see you in April. I'll be in Paducah, Kentucky. So if you're in Paducah, Kentucky, let's talk. And then I'll see you in May and June. So Donna, thanks for letting us know. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.